WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
All right, everyone, welcome to the first episode of 3-Point Conversion. Very excited to start this podcast. I'm your host, Carson Keel, along with
Adam Hambright.
And very exciting as, of course, we are starting literally right before the XFL kicks off their season, and we're nearly 60 days away from the USFL kicking off theirs. So we have a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss throughout this podcast. So just a quick introduction to kind of how things will be going. We're, of course, going to be covering the XFL. Because, again, it's a spring league. We're covering the USFL because it's a spring league. If there's a spring league, we're probably going to talk about it because this is 3-Point Conversion, your best all football podcast, and we're excited to be a part of your listening routine. So, Adam, I guess with the XFL coming up, again, this Saturday, as of the time we're recording on Tuesday, a lot of games as they're going to be kicking off the third variation of the league. Of course, this time it's not a Vince McMahon-owned league. It's The Rock along with several business partners. So I guess opening thoughts on that Saturday kickoff.
You know, I'm very excited for this. Last year we had, the USFL kind of reinvigorate the kind of alt football, the spring leagues and stuff. And obviously this is, another spring league that's coming around. We've seen the XFL before. It's going to be very different. It's obviously a different operation. But, this weekend we have, 4 games. We have Vegas Vipers at Arlington Renegades and Orlando Guardians at the Houston Roughnecks. That'll be on Saturday. Then we have St. Louis Battlehawks and the San Antonio Brahmas starting it off on Sunday. And I seem to have problems with the schedule right
So it's, again, St. Louis at the Brahmas, and then Seattle's at D.C. to end things on Sunday. So quite a packed week, especially for the Texas teams, because the 3 teams that are in Texas, they're all playing along with D.C. So no really West Coast games to kick off opening weekend, which is a little surprising if you ask me. So I guess looking at these matchups, I'm very interested mostly in Seattle at San Antonio. I think San Antonio has been kind of the most exciting expansion market. But then, of course, you have St. Louis. Again, you look at 2020. That was a very energetic fan base. They still are, making themselves well-known online. So I guess what's kind of, before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this, what's kind of your favorite matchup that you are looking forward to?
Well, the one that I'm going to be paying close attention to is that St. Louis Battlehawks and San Antonio Brahmas matchup. Really, the thing that brought me into this was when the Battlehawks announced that A.J. McCarron was going to be signed on their team. I followed him at Alabama his whole time here, and then, pretty much a journeyman in the NFL, could never really make it work. He had a couple of good starting job opportunities, and now he's getting a fresh start in the XFL. So I kind of want to see how he does, now that he's not in the NFL. Like, does he still have it? Can he get some of that magic that he had back in college? So that's the matchup I'm going to be paying close attention to, mostly because I want to see how, somebody that we saw get multiple chances in the NFL, but just couldn't keep the starting job, to now, being the starter, XFL. Can he bring some of that old excitement back?
Yeah, and I think that's been kind of a criticism of this St. Louis team because, again, the 2020 St. Louis team had Jordan Ta'amu. He, of course, went and played for Tampa Bay in the USFL last year. Wasn't exactly a great look compared to his St. Louis 5-game career, and then he's now in D.C. St. Louis, again, bringing in, I guess you could say, an older veteran quarterback to come in and maybe lead their offense. So I think that's been a criticism that's been very interesting to see because, again, you have a star like AJ, but also a St. Louis regional star like Jordan. And I guess you could kind of almost say cast him out a little bit by bringing in AJ and not bringing back Jordan. I think that's been an interesting kind of dynamic to look at for St. Louis fans.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see how it all works out. Obviously, this is going to be interesting to see with the XFL. Are they going to have the same success that the USFL had last time? I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to have a lot of of exciting football. And, they say that this is football for the fans. So hopefully we can see, something that we're not used to seeing on a football field.
Well, both leagues like to say that, but still. And we actually, so with the week 1 matchups, there's actually an interesting little fact. Seattle at DC is a repeat of week 1 in the 2020 XFL season.
That's true.
So, do you think we see a DC victory like last time, or does Seattle sneak by a win? Because Seattle they've been also another team that has been retaining, I guess, former NFL names or former college stars, such as Josh Gordon as a wide receiver. He's playing in Seattle now.
Yeah, I kind of like Seattle in this matchup. I just think that with Josh Gordon, if he's able to have any kind of success like he did in his few stints in the NFL when he was able to be playing,
right?
He was a playmaker, right? And so if he can have anything like that, I like Seattle. The only question I kind of have is, that's a long flight. That's a lot of travel. So they might be a little, wobbly getting off the plane, but I just like Seattle.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's to be fair. Let's talk about the travel, actually. So the XFL, they are having a hub kind of like the USFL, but they're doing it different. All practice, everything is basically in Dallas or Arlington, to be fair, throughout the entire week. And then home games are happening in the home stadiums, but the next day they're flying back. Cycle renews. So that's an interesting choice to have for the XFL. And that's been a question I have, and along with other people, we're going to see when it happens with kickoff. Does this kind of have jet lag on the other teams, which I think it's really going to help the Texas teams, but DC is going to be kind of the real question, and then we'll see what happens with Seattle.
Yeah, once we get those games in the next couple of weeks. But we have, we saw it with the USFL last year, right? They had just the hub, right? They were in Birmingham. There wasn't a lot of, obviously they didn't have to travel for the games. It was all right there. Now this one, they want to kind of do the same thing because they don't want to be traveling too much, but it's still...
You're traveling a lot just to have a practice hub.
You're having a practice hub, but then you're still traveling all over the country for the games, and then you're traveling all the way back to the practice hub. So I didn't really understand that. But like you said, if you're in Texas, you can hop on a bus and go. But Seattle, DC,
Vegas, St. Louis, they're kind of exempt.
You got Orlando. That's still far. St. Louis probably has the easiest travel other than the Texas teams, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle it.
Yeah, it is. So a lot to look at again this upcoming weekend. So just a quick review. So Vipers at Arlington. That's at 2 p.m. CST. That's on ABC. Orlando at Houston. That is going to be at 7:30 CST. That's on ESPN and FX. Then Sunday, St. Louis at San Antonio. That's at 2 p.m. again on ABC. And then to wrap things up, Seattle at DC. That's at 7 p.m. on ESPN. So those are your kind of the XFL games to look at this upcoming week.
Yeah, it's good for the actual television contract they were able to get. With ABC, ESPN, even FX to an extent. That's kind of lower, but with ABC and ESPN, I know technically they're both owned by Disney and everything, but that's more accessible to some people than, say, the USFL, because they'll be on FS1 and FS2 this year. So I kind of like that little television package they were able to get.
Well, I'm actually going to correct you there, because majority of the games are seemingly looking like the USFL last year, where 50% were on over-the-air television with Fox and NBC. Opening weekend, we have 3 of the stations revealed so far for the week 1 games of the USFL. It's a Fox doubleheader on Saturday, and then one game on the Michigan at Houston. That is going to be an NBC game, so we're unsure about the last one, but a little competition there. Yeah. But I think it's fair to talk about the XFL's criticism of their TV deal, because they only have 7 over-the-air games compared to USFL, where they're at least having 50%. I guess, does that play a factor possibly in looking at marketing? Because, again, 7 over-the-air games compared to the USFL's 20-ish, or over 20 that we're going to see probably. Does that kind of play into maybe we probably need to see some more flexing of games on the ABC?
It could potentially. It's definitely, you do want to get the most eyes on your product, especially when you're just starting out. with the USFL last year, they had a pretty good deal with getting, more eyes to it. The issue that they kind of had was, with it all being in Birmingham, you didn't really have those home crowds seeing them. Mm-hmm. So that might have been why they decided to kind of travel to those home markets, so that the people that couldn't see it on the games could at least go in person.
Yeah.
But I think you do want to get the most people seeing it no matter what. If it's on a streaming platform or if it's on TV. TV would probably be more accessible than a streaming platform. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, week one will be, a good little test of it, and then we'll kind of see if they decide to tweak anything in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think that's the real question. But moving on, we're just talking about the USFL. Now it's time to kind of move into another subject. So the news that kind of came out today, and we might have entire answers by the time this is put out. But Kevin Sumlin is seemingly out at Houston. He's going to be going to Maryland University of Maryland, and he is going to be a co-offensive coordinator along with a tight ends coach there. Kind of very odd to see this happening so late. A lot of people wondering if there might be already a replacement in tow. So I have a potential in mind. That's all I'm going to say, what we could see. But I guess your thoughts first on Kevin Sumlin leaving the Houston Gamblers.
I mean, he really wants to get, back to a high-level coaching position. Right. I liked him in Houston. Houston's where he was known. He was the coach at Houston, I believe, in college, and then he ended up going to Texas A&M. He didn't have the best success at Texas A&M, even though he's done about the same that Jimbo Fisher's done there. Mm-hmm. But then he goes to the Gamblers. Now he's getting back in college, even though he's not going to be a head coach. He's going to be co-offensive coordinator. I think he wants to kind of show everybody that he can get back to top of the head coaching world in either the college. He might try the NFL. I think he's going to try to stay with college and kind of get those big college contracts that we've seen more recently. So I kind of like the move. How successful was he going to be in the USFL? We won't really know.
Yeah.
But Miami, they had not Miami. I'm making mistakes already. Maryland, they had a pretty decent offense last year, so maybe he can kind of, with Talia Tungvailoa going into his final year there, maybe he can kind of give him something that he can improve on to where that offense is even better and possibly get some of those players in the NFL.
Yeah, so I have two ideas for possible replacement for Kevin Sumlin. My first one is kind of the dream pick. It's not the realistic one. Jeff Fisher, he did leave the Michigan Panthers. Rumor was because he wanted to be closer to his family in Tennessee. Now that you have this opening, could you see, because Houston is playing in Memphis, Tennessee, could you see Jeff Fisher step back in and possibly come in and kind of take over Houston? I think that's a possibility. I kind of doubt it, though. I think he might want to just step away for now, be with his family, understand that. But someone who I think could come in and kind of, I think, be a real positive influence here in the league, Mike Mularkey, former Tennessee Titans head coach, former all-around coach throughout the league. He's basically an offensive guy. I think he could be a really good pickup for the USFL if they bring him in. He could probably come in with the draft coming up probably later this month. Well, again, that's info. We're kind of waiting and seeing on that. But just something to kind of talk about and discuss later. But do you think he could be a good pick for the USFL to come in and lead this Houston franchise?
Really anybody at this point could be, a decent pick. I like the names that you mentioned. I do think the Jeff Fisher one is kind of
high in the sky.
That one might be a dream pickup for him, but I just don't see that one happening. Mularkey, I see that one more likely. It'll be interesting to see who they actually try to pick up, because they could go a number of different ways. They could go with somebody that's been in the USFL. They could try to get one of these guys that have been fired from the NFL or college football. Might try to pull some of those in. There's many names that are still floating around waiting for coaching jobs. Or or do they start trying to poach from other teams in the USFL? I don't know if you have enough experience seeing them with their teams now with just the one season.
Well, I'll say Jaron Horton, defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Maulers, he was actually up for the Pittsburgh job when they were looking at that. He apparently was up for other jobs, but he was not selected. He could be a good shoo-in for this Houston team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch in the next couple of weeks before their season starts.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So that's just about it this week, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the inaugural episode of 3-Point Conversion. I've been Carson Keel, and I've been joined by
Adam Hambright.
All right, everyone, we'll see you next week, hopefully with more news, and we'll get to talk about, of course, XFL game recaps and USFL news as we get it. So, see you around, everybody.
See you.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.